when I say honesty and transparency. I always say that they're the two most important things in recruiting, and that also too means in our internship program. I think that we have an inherent responsibility to be honest and transparent to the people that we recruit, to the students that we host in our internship before, during, and after.
While internships provide great hands-on experience and a boost for resumes, they're also one of the most important gateways for college graduates into the workforce. And with traditional entry-level roles on the decline, HR leaders are thinking about how internship programs can both support early career talent and build stronger pipelines for organizations. Welcome to Honest HR, where we turn the real issues facing today's HR departments into honest conversations with actionable insights. I'm your host, Nicole Belyna. Let's get honest. To dive further into how internships are evolving into critical first-time job strategies, today we'll unpack what makes a great internship program truly valuable for both the intern and the organization, how to address some challenges and concerns facing internship programs, and the steps HR can take to turn internships into sustainable pipelines for long-term talent needs. Today's guest has a pretty good idea on what to do when it comes to developing a great internship program. She built hers up to become this year's #1 internship program from Yello and way up. Joining us is Lane Greene from Kimley-Horn Consulting Firm. Welcome to Honest HR, Lane.
Thank you so much for having me, Nicole.
Interns at Kimley-Horn play an important role at your company, especially since the person at the very top, I understand, was once an intern himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Our current president was a former intern, and we have hundreds of other leaders and shareholders across the firm that actually initially joined Kimley-Horn in an intern capacity. So it's a really neat thing to see.
That's excellent. So, Lane, 85% of your interns over the last 4 years have received full-time offers or return internship offers. That's huge in today's market. And according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the number of people seeking their first job witnessed its first and largest increase since 1988. So that's 985,000 first-time job seekers in July before dropping to 786,000 in August. According to research from Stanford University, jobs for younger workers around that college graduate age has dropped by 13% since 2022. With such a sharp squeeze on early career opportunities, what does that mean for organizations and how they approach internships as a gateway into the workforce?
Yeah, absolutely, Nicole. Certainly something that I'm sure lots of folks in similar positions to myself are thinking about. First, let me caveat that my thoughts and responses are going to certainly be shaped by my time at Kimley-Horn and the industries that we're working within. And thankfully for us, they're very stable, if not growing. And so we actually see quite a bit of a demand for entry-level talent, but I recognize that that's not the case for everyone across all industries or all markets. I think in turn, as an employer, you then have to really pause and consider what situation you're in, what end of the spectrum you're in. If you are in a war for talent, if there's high demands for talent, then you should be thinking about your internship program as a way to feed and fuel the future pipeline for those talent demands. Conversely, if you maybe don't have as many opportunities to offer entry-level staff, I would still argue that you should consider investing in internship programming. You should just think about it a little differently. For example, even though you're going to have limited opportunities, wouldn't you rather fill them with someone that you had an opportunity to go through a multi-month interview with rather than just a couple-hour interview? That's a great way to think about your internship program as a way to vet those candidates for those fewer opportunities. So regardless of where, I'd still advocate for investing in an internship program. You're just going to need to maybe consider your future outcomes and goals that you're working for and then design it properly.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Those are great points. And so let's talk about what some of the key elements are of a well-designed internship program and one that truly benefits both the intern and the organization.
On the most basic level, most intern candidates are looking for experience. They want professional experience, exposure. They want to be out in the real world, if you will. And so we try to design and program for that. We also try to design and program for all the things that maybe they don't know that they want or need, but that we've either gathered through our experience over the years or our observations over the years. So starting off with that hands-on technical experience and exposure, our goal is to have our interns working on real billable client work within their first couple of days, if not by the afternoon of their first day with us. That fulfills their desire of getting that technical exposure and expertise, but also to communicates our outlook on interns to them. They're important, they're integral, they're valued, they're appreciated. And that for us translates to really great business outcomes. For example, I took a look back at this past July and our interns who were with us at that point in the summer, and over 600 interns were spending 80% of their time on billable client work. So that's billable work that's going out, helping us provide exceptional client service and also to progressing thousands of projects across the country. Other things that we really focus on is providing technical training relevant to our intern specific areas of focus. So for example, some of the work that we do requires specific design software skills. So we make sure that all of the different in-house training, digital learning platforms that we have, et cetera, are available to our interns so that they feel like they're really getting, once again, that professional, true, real world exposure, but that they're getting an opportunity to learn and have access to resources that they might not otherwise have access to. Our business is able to reap the benefits because if they are engaging in those learning platforms, they're going to be more proficient at their role. And the proficiency they're learning in their summer with us, they're going to be able to come right back around when they rejoin us, maybe dust a few cobwebs off, but hit the ground running, applying that technical knowledge again. A third and final piece I'd share is just networking. We really try to build in a lot of different networking opportunities from their peers and other interns all the way up to leaders within our firm. Everything from YP, young professional groups, organized groups for individuals who are more of an entry-level capacity in their career, to office-wide activities, coffee connections with shareholders and office leaders, and everything in between. A lot of our interns are looking for connectivity. They want to make sure that they can see themselves joining an organization, being friends, if you will, with the people that they work with, establishing a network and a social circle, and just feeling comfortable and reassured in their career choice and their employer choice. And we found that building in those networking opportunities is a great way to do all of those things while also ensuring that they have an opportunity to really get to feel and learn firsthand about the culture and experience of being a Kimley-Horn employee.
You brought up several great points. So thank you for that, Lane. And I 100% agree with you about the networking piece. Even in our own internship program here at SHRM, we focus a lot on internal networking, time for our interns. We encourage them to schedule coffee chats with people, not just within their department, but across the organization. We have our president and CEO, Johnny C. Taylor, does a welcome luncheon with them every year. And that's one of the first things he teaches them. Their network is their net worth, right? And so they do spend a great deal of time on networking, building their professional network, internally, externally, and also spending a great deal of time on just broad professional development, not
Absolutely.
just technical skills, right?
Absolutely.
Yep. So I loved every point you hit there, Lane. So how does HR play a role in mentorship and management involvement in the internship programs?
Yeah, absolutely. At Kimley-Horn, I feel like we try really hard, as cliche as it might sound, to strike a balance. I know that I've heard of places where HR kind of programs everything, they facilitate everything, they're the main, if not sole contact, and they just run point on any and all things intern. Conversely, I've heard of places where an intern's hired, they're situated with the team, and they just work with the team all summer. We feel like it should be a mixture of the two. And so we really aim to try to provide the guidelines, the guardrails, the infrastructure. We try to facilitate the transfer of expectations and making sure everyone's aligned on what to expect for the internship, both the teams that are hosting interns and then the interns themselves. And then we kind of try to back off. We want the day-to-day internship to be owned by the intern and their team. Sometimes we kind of joke and reference it as being like the coach of the intern program. A coach is responsible for knowing the strengths and the weaknesses of their team and trying to kind of help play to those strengths and weaknesses. They might influence the game by calling a play or calling a timeout, but they don't actually go on the court. And so that's really how we try to treat it. Sometimes we also compare it to like driving a car. We provide the car, we provide the guardrails, but we're not going to be the ones actually driving it and navigating it. That's for the team and for the intern. And I think that for us works so well because again, we're looking for our intern program to feed future hiring at Kimley-Horn. And a future hire is not going to just join the firm or work with HR. They're going to join and work with the team. And so I think you really want your intern program and the direction of the program to mirror what a full-time employee would experience if they were to return. You don't want it to be a 180 where they went through a theoretical program primarily led by HR, and then they're having a totally different experience day one when they return post-grad into a full-time position. So I think that just goes back to the balance that we try to strike.
I think the other thing too is thinking about the experience, not just for the intern, but also for the intern's manager. In some organizations, being an intern manager is someone's first time kind of dipping their toes in that supervisory capacity, that leadership capacity. And so I love what you said about giving guardrails and, kind of setting up the framework and then being that ongoing coach throughout the internship program.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, a lot of our intern supervisors, it's their first time supervising. They're typically folks who are a couple years in their career to maybe a handful of years. And they, a lot of times, are getting to supervise for the first time by supervising the intern. So it's almost twofold for us. We're getting to host an amazing intern and hopefully see what their long-term longevity could look like with Kimley-Horn, their long-term fit. But then also, too, we're getting to help train the next generation of leaders through getting them access to supervising skills, supervising opportunities, coaching, mentor, feedback, all of the things that entails as well.
Yeah, it really gives a nice 360 opportunity, for the intern and folks already in your organization. And so I want to take a look at something from the intern's perspective. What sort of challenges do you see interns facing as they're navigating this transition from school to career?
Gosh, that's such a great question. And Nicole, I would share that if there was someone who was involved in intern programs and facilitating one, if they haven't stopped to ask that question, it should, because your program is only ever going to be as successful as the interns within it. And so if you're not designing for their success, I don't want to go as far as to say you're setting them up for failure, but you're certainly missing some opportunity. I think present challenges, gosh, there's so many, but just to pick a couple, I think for a lot of interns, this is the first time that they're setting out and doing something new, potentially even something solo if they're relocating to a new area or they're joining a field or industry that maybe they don't have any friends and family who have worked within. And so for a lot of them, there's just some maybe anxiety and fear and some struggle around adjusting to that. Additionally, some other things that I think our interns struggle to face. Transitioning to a full-time work week for us in office, I think has really come up, especially in the post-COVID era, where a lot of the students have had periods of time where they'd had maybe a little bit more of a schedule or environment. Also, too, working in an office on a full-time schedule is different than when you're going to classes intermittently, maybe sneaking in some afternoon naps. So I think that is something that you certainly have to think through. For example, we start a lot of our interns on Tuesdays just to give them a shorter first week to help them assimilate. Another thing that comes to mind, and this might sound a little sharp, but it's something that I feel a lot of students struggle with today, and I don't intend it to sound sharp, more so just honest. I think a lot of students are struggling with the humbling that comes from realizing that they don't know it all and that they have to be comfortable asking questions and admitting that they don't know something. Similarly, I think a lot of students had to go through a humbling period of realizing that they might have been the top of their class at their respective university, They might have been the president of a student organization. They might have had all these accolades. But then when they come into an environment and they're looking around and everybody else has those accolades too, I think sometimes there's a little bit of a learning lesson in humility, humbling as I called it, that they have to work through. Um, and I think within that, people are then trying to figure out their new identity. And so I think those are challenges where we had seen it show up in some of our interns, and then we tried to just programmatically design things to either acknowledge it or support it or adjust for it.
Yeah, those are great examples. I also think about interns' exposure to various generations, right? Being exposed to that multi-generational workforce certainly is something that we help them navigate through. A friend shared with me, they had an intern who didn't really have exposure to like business dinners or business meals. And so, they went out for a business lunch and everybody got sandwiches, and the intern ordered lobster. And so I think it's just these little things, right? That if you can kind of get away with it when you're the intern, right? Everybody thinks it's sort of endearing and funny. But it's a good learning lesson to be able to coach through those scenarios as an intern versus, if you're walking into your first day in your first full-time role. Some people in your organization can be a little offended by how you interact in those type of situations.
I think a lot of what you just called out, I would couch as professionalism. I think with the generational differences, also to just first-time experiences and exposure, a lot of it can be tied back to professionalism and whether or not there's alignment on what's appropriate from a communication standpoint, a presence, attire, an interaction. I think a lot of interns struggle because they see people who have worked together for decades being really friendly, and then all of a sudden they're coming in and they want to join in as well without realizing that rapport and relationship has been established over years, and they don't necessarily get to jump in and be at the same level right away. And so I think there's a lot that you could probably put under that just general professionalism umbrella that interns maybe struggle with and have a little bit of a learning curve in their internship. But again, the hope is that your program can help bridge that gap.
Absolutely. So you've touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to just go back to this topic and kind of drive it home, which is, how can HR leaders tie internship programs directly to long-term talent pipeline goals?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love talking about this. And it's probably because I'm biased and I'm responsible for our intern programs as well as our college recruiting programs. So they go hand in hand. But if you have any sort of scale to your entry level hiring at your organization and you're not leveraging your intern program to do that, you're missing out on so many opportunities. You're also just missing out on some general efficiencies and effectiveness aspects because it is for us the largest pool and pipeline that we recruit from. And so this past year, for example, at Kimley-Horn, we filled over half of our full-time entry-level hires from the summer 2024 intern program. And so now that we've built it up and we've got it, it's just a well-oiled machine and we're able to just keep it up and keep it running. And with that, we're even looking to expand it because not all of our interns convert at the end of a summer. Our summer intern program is our largest intern program. And they don't convert for a variety of reasons. But because of that, we're even talking about scaling our intern program to exceed our full-time hiring to give us a little bit of padding for that lack of conversion. And so it's a great way, going back to what we discussed at the beginning, to really check and see, is someone a good fit you? They can see if your organization's a great fit for them. And then you can expedite their future hiring, see where your delta is at the end of the year. And then you can go out to campus recruiting efforts. You can go through online applicants and you can supplement any additional recruiting needs you might have, all the while having individuals that you've already trained, integrated, and vetted, slated to come back on board.
Yeah. Well, and I also think about, even those interns who don't end up, returning to your organization or don't end up becoming full-time employees. I think when an organization builds out a well-rounded, reputable internship program, and other employers start to see like, hey, I know I can hire great talent from, this organization's internship program. They turn out some really great full-time employees for us. You've got that just employer brand that you can really build up from that reputation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so many industries are interconnected. So we have folks who maybe interned with us and then realized that they wanted to go work in an adjacent aspect of industry, but they had a great internship with us. And then later down the road, they're becoming a client or they're becoming a TV partner. And so there are so many other long-term outcomes, not just within your internal recruiting, but it could go beyond that to your marketing and other positive impacts for your overall business.
Yeah. Well, you and I both know all too well, eh, recruiting talent is certainly a marathon, right? So it's always about the long road. So I want to switch gears here a little bit and talk about SHRM's toolkit and developing and implementing internship programs. It emphasizes that compliance with labor laws, pay practices, and clear agreements is just as critical as the program design and the experience that you're providing to the interns. So, from your perspective, what compliance considerations, like the primary beneficiary test, should HR leaders keep front and center when creating or improving their internship programs?
Absolutely. Yes and yes, everything. We're a federal contractor. And so I'm going to advocate for any and all compliance resources and considerations. And SHRM has so many that have been helpful to me. Personally, I didn't study human resources. I found my way into HR and recruiting, like I know a lot of different people do. And so I didn't know anything about employment law and compliance. And I have distinct memories of sitting at my first desk for Kimley-Horn, becoming a SHRM member and going and then scouring the website. I think the different resources that you all have outlined give a great springboard for folks who are trying to figure out what to build, how to build, and most importantly, how to do it in a way that provides equitable, fair, and compliance-oriented opportunities to any and all applicants that you might consider.
So we talked a lot about the opportunities that internships can create. But it's also important to acknowledge some of the challenges and criticisms that these programs face. These aren't always easy to talk about, but if we don't, we risk missing big opportunities for improvement. So let's dig into three of these challenges together. So many internships, as you know, have historically been unpaid. How can organizations create more equitable and inclusive opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely, Nicole. So at Kimley-Horn, all of our internships are paid. So I don't have experience doing and working through these situations directly, but I certainly have learned some things along the way being in industry. The main thing being that if you don't have the funds yourself, there are probably funds out there. You might just have to go and find them. For example, I know some universities offer sponsorships to help support different internship opportunities or students who have been accepted into a qualifying internship. Conversely, there are different professional organizations that have sponsorship programs to sponsor students pursuing internships in that field or industry. And so I think it could just be an instance where if you're a program coordinator and there's a gap between what you want to do and what you can do with regard to the budget or what your business can currently support, go externally and see what you can find. It might require a little bit of extra legwork. It might require some education to the students that you're recruiting if there's anything that they need to do on their end to qualify. But typically, I think there's some things out there you're just going to have to take for them.
Absolutely. Those are great opportunities to take advantage of for sure. So we've talked about this already a couple of times, which is not every intern is converted to a full-time hire. And that's okay. But how should organizations set expectations up front? And what responsibility do they have to provide career value, even if there's no job at the end?
Absolutely. So if any of my team members end up watching this, they're probably going to laugh when I say honesty and transparency. I always say that they're the two most important things in recruiting, and that also tunes in our internship program. I think that we have an inherent responsibility to be honest and transparent to the people that we recruit, to the students that we host in our internship before, during, and after. And that means being very upfront around the opportunity as it exists today, opportunities in future. A guiding principle that we try to follow, we don't always get right, but we certainly aim to, is that we're going to provide coaching and feedback all along the way, such that when we have a conversation around next steps, it's no surprise to any of the parties involved what's going to be shared in that conversation. So it could be, hey, great, we'd love to have you back. It could be a conversation around encouraging them to pursue something else, but we know we've done right by that person if when we have that conversation, no one is blindsided or feels like they had a 180 put on them. So again, I think that responsibility is inherent. But if you're being honest and you're being transparent before the internship as well as during it, you're typically safeguarding yourself there. I would add though, Nicole, if you know that your internship opportunities don't necessarily always turn into providing full-time opportunities, you might just want to adjust the marketing that you take with interns. Still be honest and transparent, but make sure they understand that they're going to have a great experience. They're going to get professional experience that would be transferable to other places. I know a lot of students today look for something that has a futuristic element to it where there could potentially be long-term matches and opportunities. So I think you just have to acknowledge that that's not necessarily maybe what your program offers, but make sure that you really expand on to the student population, all the other things that your program offers.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly there are students who are not looking for a long-term opportunity. Many students today end up doing multiple internships by the end of their by the time they're ready to graduate. And so, I think it's also maybe finding that match, right? Getting to the the right student. And so, internships, as we have talked about, don't last forever. But we both agree we're looking at it from a long-term perspective. What are some of the risks of relying too heavily on short-term talent instead of building long-term early career goals?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, in my mind, it's a little nuanced, but a lot of it to me goes back to culture. And that's probably because culture is so important at Kimley-Horn. We have really strong retention rates within our industry. We have a lot of professionals who have significant tenure. And that is what allows us to continue the culture that we've had at our firm and ensure and safeguard it carrying on to the future. And I think when you invest in just short-term hiring goals, you're always setting yourself up to have a little bit of a revolving door. And so then you don't get the benefit of tenure, of cultural stewardship, of people really understanding the business, understanding the dynamics, understanding the way things have historically done, and contextually how that can be leveraged for the future. And so to me, they're not maybe necessarily as one for one. And again, using my earlier word, nuanced. I think it's more so that they trickle out and they impact and permeate a lot of different aspects of your business and your organization. And maybe you don't necessarily see them big and glaring. They're more so cracks. But I think having those long-term talent investments and bringing people in, investing in them, giving them all the tools, the training, and the resources, that's how you either prevent or fill those cracks, because those people are then they're feeling committed, they're invested in, they know that the organization values them, they're growing up within the organization. So there's just a level of trust there as well as commitment that again, I think is nuanced, but fills and avoids certainly those cracks.
Yeah. Well, thank you for helping us talk through those good questions. So I want to turn now and look ahead. Looking in your crystal ball, how do you see the role of internships evolving over the next 5 years?
Absolutely. Well, speaking just for Kimley-Horn, I think I alluded to this earlier. I see it growing. We have found that it's just such a productive and meaningful and positive pipeline for us that for our long-term hiring goals, it makes sense to continue to expand the intern program such that it's filling more and more of our future programming for full-time hiring. We're even looking at alternative intern programs, underclassmen intern programs. You, Nicole, alluded to the fact that a lot of different people now like to have a variety of different internships across different industries. And so trying to figure out how do we continue our model of trying to have that long-term investment commit with our interns while also giving them the opportunity to feel as though they've had different experiences and exposures over time. And so I think for us, it's quite a exciting runway. There's a lot of runway to it. And we just see it continuing to grow and expand.
So, what advice would you give to HR professionals who want to strengthen or launch an internship program today in today's job market?
Absolutely. That's such an exciting question. And I feel like I have thoughts around internship programming in general, but also just I feel like lessons that I've learned along the way as myself and all of my different partners have been working to build and expand and evolve our programs. The first thing that comes to mind is productivity over perfectionism. We can all dream big, but if we're constantly focused on that dream and that perfectionistic idea of what the program can be, that sometimes can hinder us from just getting started. And so I think you really had to try to balance just being productive and trying to take it piece by piece, day by day. Within that, I think another piece of advice that I would share is think about your effort and your impact and try to prioritize things that take low effort and high impact. You know, a lot of times on the HR side of things, some teams at certain organizations run pretty lean. We're trying to do lots with less. And so that effort impact analysis has always been really helpful to myself and my partners. Same thing as in our matrix, trying to figure out urgent, important, and then prioritizing accordingly. Outside of that, though, I think too, you just have to constantly ask for and then apply feedback. And that feedback has to come from both your interns as well as the teams hosting interns. Because again, where we started, Nicole, we're providing the guidelines, we're providing the structure, we're coaching, we're cheerleading, but we're not in the day-to-day trenches. And so if we're not soliciting feedback, if we're not asking what would have been more helpful, or what would have been helpful, and what would be more helpful in future from the teams hosting our interns, we're missing out on the most relevant perspectives in the conversation. So those are just a couple of things that come to mind.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Lane, so much for sharing your insights with us. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Honest HR, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks so much, Nicole.
Hello, friends. We hope this week's episode gave you the candid tips and insights you need to keep growing and thriving in your career. Honest HR is part of HR Daily, the content series from SHRM that delivers a daily newsletter directly to your inbox, filled with all the latest HR news and research. Sign up at shrm.org/HRdaily. Plus, follow SHRM on social media for even more clips and stories. Like, share, and add to the comments. Because real change starts with real talk.
SHRM. This podcast is approved for 0.5 professional development credits, aka PDCs, toward SHRM-SCP and SHRM-SCP recertification. Enter the following PDC activity ID in your SHRM activity portal to log your credit. 26-276XF. That's 26-276XF. This ID expires on November 1st, 2026.